So,
well, this brings me to, if you're done here, I want to move to my pandemic reaction number one. I have two pandemic reactions that I've sort of been chewing on, and I'd like to get your insight on this.
I'm curious.
So number one is the mid-length surfboard the new high performance shortboard? And I'll tell you, the waves have been good, right? And it's been crowded. I mean, there's more surfers in the water than there's ever been, and that makes sense. Everyone's unemployed. One thing I've noticed, and I'm wondering if this is related to the COVID lockdowns and therefore no competitive professional surfing. Your average young surfer, say 20-year-old surfer, is that more of them are riding mid-length surfboards than ever before. Now, I see a lot of kids on 7.4 single fins. They're good surfers. They catch tons of waves. More often than not, they're hipster longboarders that really ride a longboard really good. And so a 7.4 is their shortboard anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's been there all along. But more to my point, and sort of adding to the mix in this question, is the mid-length the new high-performance shortboard, is that because there is no high-performance shortboard competitive surfing ideal, because the WSL and all competitions, NSSAs, everything's been on hold for going on 8 months now, I see a lot of guys, and not hipsters per se, but surfers who normally would be ripping on high-performance shortboards, who are more of the competitive surfing mindset. Like I say, guys that surf and grew up surfing the NSSAs and the WSAs. I see these kids riding mid-lengths. Now, it could be that it's regional to me where I'm at here, because Rob Machado lives and surfs in this area. He has a ton of influence. He's riding and he's selling tons of those Seaside model Firewire, the 7.4 big fishes. A lot of guys my age in their 30s, 40s, and 50s are riding those boards and they're loving them. And they're surfing, they're doing the same turns they'd be doing on the board if it was smaller. And so the 20-year-old surfer is like, God, just to keep up with these 30, 40, and 50-year-old guys, they have to go to bigger boards. And they're realizing, hey, these boards are fast and I can surf pretty good on them. So I guess my question to you is the mid-length the new high-performance shortboard? Is this a pandemic reaction because we don't have competitive surfing as an ideal that the 20-year-old surfer is setting his sights towards? The reality is the reality in the water, in his realm each and every day.
Yeah.
Have I set you up for enough here?
Yeah, you have. And those are a couple of different questions. Is the mid-length the new high-performance shortboard? Hell no. But I see what you're saying is the young people who used to ride the high-performance shortboard are now on the mid-length. Yes to that. Is the pandemic and the lack of WSL competition the reason for it? I think that's a little bit of a stretch. It might be a reason for 5% of them. 5% of those riders would have been influenced and maybe inspired by Kalohe Andino instead of Rob Machado, and they would have then made a purchase for the Mayhem, thruster instead of the Machado's board. But that's kind of a small percentage, I would say. I think there was a confluence of factors in place before this pandemic happened that set up this mid-length movement that we're all experiencing. And I didn't even think about Machado's Seaside. That's a very, like you said, regional example. I think of Torren Martyn. I think of Devin Howard with Channel Islands. I think of albums, got a number of them, and the one that you've been writing from Seikl. Like everybody, all these individual shapers have seen kind of what's the successes that surfers are having on those boards and are then developing models on their own. I just got a DM from a listener 2 or 3 days ago saying that he wants the one similar to the Torren Martyn's riding, but he's in Southern California. So he sent me a link to Doc Lausch's website and he goes, look at this board that Doc has. And I didn't even know Doc was doing mid-lengths, He's like, check this one out. How does this look compared to the Torren Martyn one? And so I sized it up and it doesn't look like Torren Martyn's essentially, but that's irrelevant to our conversation. But the point is, there's all of these people trying to make mid-lengths now because surfers are just having more fun on them.
Well, actually, you bring up a great point, and there's always been the guys that made mid-lengths. There's always been the Josh Halls and the Chris Christensen's, right?
Well, Josh Hall, though, is longfish, right? Is he a mid-length guy?
Yes. But my point is, whoever it is, let's say it's Josh Hall, let's say it's Chris Christensen, there's always been the guys that have been making mid-lengths that
Takayama
have made fishes, have made mid-lengths. What we're seeing, I think, and you bring up Doc, which is a great example, is Doc is traditionally a Huntington Beach shortboard shaper.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Now we're seeing a lot of those guys. Channel Islands. That's basically a competitive shortboard, high performance shortboard brand.
For sure.
So we're seeing those guys come into the market with these mid-length boards, which to me speaks to this 20-year-old surfer that was a Doc high performance shortboard surfer is now 28 and is like going, God, I got to deal with this 21-year-old at my local spot. I need more foam. And this board rips just as, relatively speaking, just as well as my prior high performance shortboard. And so I'm wondering so I get it that there's always going to be the mid-length hipster guy. I'm agreeing, like, that's been around for 10 years now.
Of course.
What I'm saying is not the Alex Nost guy, but the guy who was ripping on a high performance Doc or ripping on a high performance Channel Islands or ripping even on a high performance Firewire and now going to the mid-length board and going, you know what, I'm catching a ton of more waves. I'm older now. I'm digging it. This wasn't traditionally our mid-length hipster guy. In fact, they kind of look down on the mid-length hipster guy. They're like, oh, there's that, you know what I mean? But
dude,
anyway, I'm seeing that. And I'm on a 6'10" out in the water and I'm feeling kind of underpowered sometimes.
For sure.
On my board, everybody seems to be on a 7'4".
Yeah. So I want to tease apart a couple of things. You're saying the traditional mid-length hipster guy. I don't think that was a traditional thing. Alex Nost was a log rider. Like the hipsters were generally longboard and log riders, and right. Josh Hall is a big board guy. Like the mid-length thing is a newer trend.
I think Josh Hall would argue that case. I would think if you
that he's a mid-length guy.
Yeah,
I think he's a big board guy. Well, okay. Well, whatever the case is, the mid-length trend is a newer trend in general because there were eggs before, but hipsters weren't riding eggs, right? They were riding logs and things like that. And fish, for sure, fish. But the mid-length thing is relatively new. But your point is still very salient. And I would argue kind of for your original point about the high performance thing is, honestly, there's a high performance aspect to the mid-lengths. You're not going to be doing airs on them. But when you watch, let's say, Torren Martyn at J-Bay, that classic footage, now I look at it as classic because it's a couple years old. But if you expand your definition of high performance surfing, I would categorize that as high performance surfing. The turns he's doing are gnarly. The bottom turns he's doing are gnarly. And into the top turns, so much rail, tremendous amount of speed, tons of maneuverability, but he's not doing airs. It doesn't fit the high performance definition of airs and maybe redirecting like 360s and stuff like that. But he's freaking shredding,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm not saying the actual surfing that's taking place isn't high performance. I'm just saying the guy that was on the short aerial high performance short board is now he's way more open-minded
for sure
towards getting on a 6'8" twin fin and going, wow, this thing's fast and I catch tons of waves and I'm 28 now and I'm not really doing aerials anymore anyway. I've got a bum knee or whatever.
Well, let's get real. He wasn't doing aerials in the first place.
Exactly.
Like all of us.
Exactly.
We never quite surfed up to our potential. We did one rad thing once, and so we set that as the bar of this is how good of a surfer I am. But 20 sessions out of 20, we would fall short of that bar. And so you come to a realization.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, well, usually it takes 10 or 20 years, but you finally come to the realization that foam is your friend, and the mid-length is the perfect solution to all of those things because it actually elevates your performance. If you always fell short of that standard before, now you're kind of going beyond the standard. You're getting more waves. you're doing better turns. You're coming out of them with more speed. You're riding the wave a lot farther. So you're doing more turns on that wave. It's like, oh my gosh, this all amounts to more fun.
Yeah.
More fun and more surfing.
Your actual time riding the wave is way greater, which means you have more opportunities to expand your surfing.
Exactly.